Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be another fun debate as we talk about prequel stories and whether they're a lazy form of storytelling or not. Now we all know the form of prequel stories. This is where you explore the past backstory of an established character or mythology. Now on the plus side, prequels enable the opportunity for further explanation or adding greater context to the original story or characters. Now the downside of prequels is that you risk upending and ruining the set mythology or canon that's been established. If the prequel story fails to tie up with what's been written before, it can cause a lot of continuity issues and end up annoying a lot of the original fanbase. So, are prequels a lazy form of storytelling? I'm going to say yes for a multiple amount of reasons, but the prime one being that with the prequel, you already rely on a set backstory with established characters. So, in many respects, in terms of writing, half the work is already done for you. In terms of the framework and the blueprint, it's already there for you to complete the building as such. Why take the continuity forward with new stories and characters when it's far easier just to use what's already there? It's always more difficult to create something new regardless of what field you're in, whether it be art, music, writing or directing. Not just in terms of the creative process itself, but then also having to market and monetize your product and sell it to an overall audience. It's just much more of a risk to bank on original content these days, and we've been at this stage in terms of movies and entertainment for a long time now. We've already seen a long-term reliance on making sequels and remakes, but at the very least, the sequel does look to take the continuity forward for the most part. For any franchise or continuity to fully sustain itself, or any series, the best action is to go forward and tell new stories, and that's how they can really evolve and progress and hopefully improve over time. But by constantly relying on prequels and past backstory, the franchise or the continuity risks becoming stagnant and stale. Instead of telling fresher stories, you end up telling unnecessary ones. And in this regard, we unfortunately have to talk about one of the most famous franchises, Star Wars, a franchise that was once universally loved, which has certainly become far more divided through its prequel stories, where we deal with the prequel trilogy, and also most recently with the Disney Plus series, The Book of Boba Fett, and also Obi Wan Kenobi. We look at these stories and we ask the question, was it really important to see how Anakin became Darth Vader? Did we really need to see what Obi-Wan got up to post the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope? Now the hardcore Star Wars fans may very well have wanted to see these stories, but have these prequel stories really added anything to the legacy of the Star Wars franchise? If anything, when looking at the reaction, especially with the recent series on Disney Plus, the prequel stories have caused far more issues in terms of the continuity and established canon, and also the treatment of iconic characters. Now when we talk about established canon, we could also refer to Star Trek, and especially when we look at the modern series, so the likes of Star Trek Discovery, and the fact that the first two seasons were very much a prequel set before the original series, which again had no justification for being set in that particular time period, as they were already riffing off the established canon. Certain elements within the series just didn't tie up with what had been already put forward before, which again causes a lot of disapproval amongst the fan base that certain events and elements contradicted what had already been established. And these two franchises, Star Wars and Star Trek, are just two of many examples of how the prequel stories can go wrong because of the lack of effort in terms of building new stories and characters. We also look at the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movies, which after the massive impact of the first trilogy directed by Peter Jackson, was involved in the story of the dwarves trying to reclaim their mountain from the dragon known as Smaug. Now, we really have to ask ourselves, despite the original source material, was the story of The Hobbit really worth being expanded over 3 films, let alone 3 films that were also 3 hours each? Could the story have been condensed to 2 movies and perhaps even 1 movie overall? And whilst these movies didn't quite cause the divisiveness amongst the fans as both what Star Trek and Star Wars did, we still ask ourselves, were they really necessary? We then look at the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, the Amazon series, of which there is so much focus and scrutiny. Again, this is a prequel story to an extent, as the story is set thousands of years before the original 3 books. Now, wouldn't it have been far more enticing to take the story forward if we really needed a Lord of the Rings series at all? And despite the series not coming out till September 2022, there's already been a huge amount of criticism, as many fans feel that they are just riffing off what's already been established, citing an awareness in terms of the lack of originality and boldness in terms of storytelling. Now, of course, there have been many prequel stories that have been truly great, Immediately, I think of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, one of my most favourite films of all time. When we look at that movie, that's really only a prequel in terms of the year that it's set. There is nothing else within the film that really ties to Raiders of the Lost Ark or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's very much its own standalone installment, just another adventure for the character. So it really doesn't do anything to damage established canon or indeed taint the overall legacy of the character. I also look at Spartacus, Gods of the Arena, without doubt one of the best ever prequel series to one of television's greatest ever shows. This time it was focusing on the era of the gladiators before Spartacus came to the Ludus. So yes, it did feature a lot of the characters that took place in Spartacus Blood and Sand the first season, but at the same time it didn't do anything to affect the main character of Spartacus or indeed what happened in the later future series, both in terms of Vengeance and also War of the Damned. So if indeed prequel series are continuing to exist, I think the best way is to make sure that they're set so far back in terms of the established canon that they don't really prove to be that significant in terms of what's already happened or what will happen going forward. But it's in that statement alone that really raises the question once again, are prequels really necessary? Are they really just a form of lazy storytelling because producers and screenwriters can't be bothered to take the extra time and effort to produce newer characters and newer stories? Again, we go back to the overall fear by movie studios, relying very much more on IPs and franchises because they fear that any new characters won't really be known by audiences, therefore they'll have less chance to succeed. And whilst in theory that does make sense, we also have to remember that a lot of the classic franchises that studios keep doing these prequel movies for all started off being unknown. All of these franchises at some point had to be a risk in terms of introducing newer continuities, newer universes and new canon that people didn't know anything about. Just think of all of the classic franchises that we would have missed out on, particularly originating from the 80s, if we had the mindset back then that we have now and instead just remaking on what's gone on before. Think of everything that we would have missed out on, not only in terms of entertainment, but also in terms of popular culture as well. So this is why I always feel that studios should really be more bold and more creative, not only in terms of storytelling, but also to really satisfy the fan base and not cause any more division by going back and doing prequels just because you're too lazy and end up destroying the established canon and also the legacy of the iconic characters. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings in terms of prequel stories and whether they're a lazy form of storytelling or not. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think prequel stories can be interesting if done right? Do you think prequel stories should very much exist? Or are you like me and are far more of an advocate of really pushing stories forward and looking to really evolve and be far more progressive and creative in terms of newer characters and also taking the franchises forward in a new direction? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoy this type of video and would like to see me debate and talk about certain other issues regarding movies and entertainment and pop culture in general, then drop me a suggestion of what you'd like to see me talk about within the channel, and then we can have further discussion. I could provide far more commentary for you within the chosen subject as well. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay in safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.